is referred as a challenger because they're not afraid to buck societal rules in pursuit of justice. They believe it is their job to combat oppression and stand up for those weaker than themselves. Type 8s make strong leaders who are assertive, goal-oriented, and resilient.
That's
What?
crazy. So is it possible for, because you mentioned you were in the 90s for the
Mhm.
percentile when it comes to this. So does that mean it's possible that you'll have a percentage 8 and then a percentage other number?
Yes. So I am a wing 2.
Okay.
So my line goes to 2. Oh, and 2 is the helper. So a good chunk of me wants to constantly help, which is a really great combination for somebody who has my orientation of an 8. So I believe the
That, I
other.
mean, that was like perfect. Like that, that kind of nailed in a nutshell,
Yeah,
Ingrid, on a
I know.
checklist.
That's why I was tripping. I was like, I'm not special. Like they know me. Somebody's been in my room or whatever.
You
Like
know,
it's
it's
crazy.
funny. It's funny. So, like, oddly enough, going back to the ministry, I don't know why this keeps coming up. So, um, we used to have our midweek services on Tuesdays, right? So every Tuesday for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years, all of the fellas would go out and we just hang out. We'd go to like Applebee's, just anywhere that was open late, and
Mhm.
we would just talk about stuff like this, right? And we talk about, just stuff. And this was the, like, again, we were like really into growing and learning and having these conversations. And one thing they learned about me is that I had this ability to read people really well. Like, weirdly, like it got to the point where they would be like, all right, tell us about the server. And it would be this thing that they would test if it was a server that we hadn't seen before. And I would like say stuff like, okay, this person, they probably just recently got out of a relationship. This is probably what's going on, this and the next thing. And then because we'd be there for hours. So over the course of time, we would
Right.
kind of ask the questions to see how accurate I was. And they
Mhm.
would always freak out at how much I would, be spot on about the
Mhm.
situation.
Mhm.
So the question is why? And I think the thing that I would try to explain to them, because the question would be like, how can you do this?
Right.
Is I genuinely believe that there's only a handful of types of people out there. There's only so many types.
Yeah.
And we're all branched off versions of those foundational types. And those branches come from upbringing, from, cultural situations,
Yep.
whatever types of situations that you grow up in. But as a general rule, those foundations exist. And those foundations, I believe, go past just your personality. I think oftentimes they're manifest in the way you stand, in your facial features, in the shape of your body,
Yeah.
and I think what you notice is when you start to pay attention to these things, you start realizing that your biology is actually reflected in your personality. And when you
Yeah.
can learn to line these things up, you can look at a person and just by the way they stand, the way they posture themselves, the shape of their face, and the way they communicate a couple of things, you can get a really good baseline as to who a person is. And if you're the type of person who wants to interact with people successfully, well, you can use that to be intentional with your communication to make people feel more comfortable with interacting with you. It's a superpower that should be a skill, but
You know
it's
what's
just not
crazy?
discussed.
My whole life, also, I was called a chameleon. So I don't know if you ever read the book The One by Ed Milet.
No, I haven't. I have not read it.
Okay, truth be told, I haven't either. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because when he was talking about how he grew up,
Okay.
what he was describing and how he was made up made me think about me. So in the comments, guys, I put down all the 9 personalities. I took the time while DQ was giving us that amazing insight to write down all the ones that they are. Which one do you guys think you are? Who do you think you are? Are you the perfectionist, the giver, the achiever, the individualist, the investigator, the skeptic, the enthusiast, the challenger, the peacemaker? Again, I'm the challenger, my husband's the peacemaker. So I'm curious what you guys think you guys are. Again, the better you know yourself, just like Daniel was explaining, the better you're going to be able to network and the better you're going to be able to gain from those relationships that you're trying to establish, especially if you can. This sounds like you're manipulating, and I don't mean to come off that way, but it's really about leverage. Like, kind of like if your mom was yelling at you, like if you're going to try to get the most out of your mom, you're not going to like yell back, right? You might like make yourself smaller, look cuter, bigger eyed, you know, like, oh, come on, mommy, right? Like, you have to read the room, read the understanding of people's personalities so that you can be a better closer, you can be a better in sales, you can get what you're looking for. And so I found this so fascinating because the folks who can't control that or have a better understanding, they may struggle. But the better you know stuff about personalities, and if you can camouflage yourself to some degree, the better you will be at sales. You know, things like that. But gosh, I was going to say something. I'm trying to remember now when I was talking about bringing up the Enneagram and like what number you. Oh, Ed Milet. He was talking about how his dad was an alcoholic, and he already knew what mood his dad was in before he would walk into the door, just by how he would put the key in the lock. And I was like, oh, that resonated with me so much because I had an alcoholic stepdad, and he was very short fused. So him and my mom, we used to fight a lot. And so based on what was happening in the dynamic of their very challenging relationship, they're not together anymore. That was how I would then try to react or like make myself small or, you know, like try to, like, I think one of the things Ed Milet said was like he would try to win over his dad before he knew that he would get enraged or something like that. And that reminded me so much of me. Like when my stepdad was like a little bit off, like I would see if I could win him over as he was coming into our home. And then realizing now that, yes, was it a challenging childhood? Of course. But that actually ended up building some superpower in me where I can read people a little bit better because I pay attention, you know, do they do this? You know, when they're thinking, their brow is a little talking about you, DQ. Yeah, and definitely, Eric, trauma, it's something I've been learning. And, you know, God bless Marlon Johnson, because he kind of helped me understand this a little bit about myself, that you can look at your trauma and be like, woe is me, and feel victimized by it. Or you can empower yourself and say, wow, I lived through that to, you know, fight another day, and it made me a stronger person because of it. And so rather than be a victim, you can be a victor. And I was like, wow, like that's how I feel. I feel like I went through a lot of stuff as a young person, and now I'm a much better person at sales. I'm a much better communicator because that trauma, that terrible experience growing up, made me ultimately a better person now that I'm older. And that's the way I choose to look at it, because I don't want to be a victim, you know? So
Yeah,
what do you think, DQ?
I genuinely think that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that happens only if we choose to let that be what happens.
Yes.
Because it's very easy for two people to have the exact same experience, and one becomes a victim as a
Mm-hmm.
result and crumbles. The other one is something that they grow. Thank you, Ernest. It's like the
Aramis.
story
I think it's Aramis.
Aramis.
Mhm.
Aramis. I think it's the same water that hardens the egg, softens the potato.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that I tend to take the mindset that I genuinely believe we're here for a purpose. I think that
Mm-hmm.
anything that happens in our lives is something that is supposed to happen to give us the tools and the resources that we need to become the best version of ourselves. And without that experience or that trauma or that situation, even though that was hard, we couldn't have become the person we were supposed to become without that. So
Mm-hmm.
rather than looking at that with disdain and being discouraged by it, I rather look at it as, okay, there's something I'm supposed to get from this, right? And I think life shows us, iron sharpens iron, but not without friction. You don't get diamonds without pressure. You don't get gold without fire, right? Pick your analogy, but life tells us that there's this template that strong things go through hard crap. And you got to be able to sustain that to be able to step into it. And so I just don't look at those things as negatives. They suck, right? Like full transparency. I feel like absolute death and have for about a month and go to bed scared some nights. But what am I going to do? Whine? Like I can't, like I'm either here for a reason or I'm not. And if I am, then this is just something else I got to go through and I got to figure it out. You know what I mean? I could cry about it, but what's going to happen for that, right? Exactly, Peter. I think that really summarizes it. And so for me, I think that outlook and decisions from that outlook is everything. And if I have to choose between being an egg or the potato, I'm not trying to be a potato. No, none against potatoes. I just don't want to be one.
A nice baked potato with some
Nah, baked potatoes are good, but just mashed potatoes, I mean, that's not food. That nobody likes mashed potatoes. Those are disgusting.
What? Okay. No, that's so true. And I love that and again, there's probably things going on about you that I just wasn't aware. So I'm sorry to hear I know that we've talked a lot about like some of the health stuff and, honestly, like my logical brain, my frontal cortex tells me, Ingryd, you should probably lay low on the carbs. And then like my monkey brain is like, oh, but energy, you must eat the carbs. Many times my monkey brain wins, but for sure, you have to decide, what does that experience mean to you? And if you have an attitude of it's for you, not to you or against you, then you're going to be way better off. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think, Ingrid, that honestly leads back to a point that you made before. That's facts, Dustin. I think you talked about manipulation. Mm-hmm. And that for me is something I address a lot, right? I talk about sales. This is the thing I do. And so this comes up. And the reality is I teach a lot of things that could get you really good at being a manipulative person.
Right.
But I think that there's multiple sides to that coin. And I think the other side of that coin is, well, let's use pre-foreclosures, for example.
For the greater good, man. Your values matter. At the end of the day, you're just helping lead horses to water.
That's it.
Your values are the thing that ultimately will help
humans have a fantastic gift at getting in their own way for their entire lives and staying there and then hating where they're at. It goes back to what we're saying. Imagine being the person skilled enough to get people out of their own way. For me, that's what sales is. And that manipulation, I think even if you want to keep the word manipulate, well, what am I manipulating? I'm manipulating the trauma and the bad habits that have gotten you comfortable with a life that you don't want to live. And I'm manipulating them out of your way so that you can look in the mirror and have a real conversation and make a decision from a clear place, not from a clogged place that keeps holding you back.
Oh, guys.
If that's what I'm manipulating, I'm good with that.
That was fire. Daniel Quijano, you came on here and dropped it like it was hot. That was awesome.
Appreciate hot potato.
A little hot potato DQ. I love it. Yeah. Well, I do want to be respectful of your time. I got respectful of mine. My husband's one of the things that we're starting to prioritize in our family is cooking together with our kids singularly. So we're prioritizing having dinner together. And so
love that.
I gotta call it a day, but let's see what these last couple of comments. Speaking of the importance of omega-3 and 6, from these two, the body makes many things, including the hormone that allows body to access, store, and interact more efficiently. Well, I think you believe in yourself. I agree with you. I thought it was the 3 that was more important than the 6, no? Because you get a lot of omega something from like a lot of
I think we get a lot of 3s now and we're deficient in 6s. We're over in one of the 2, I believe, right now. And that's where you need the balance. Audrey, what's up, man?
Trauma is like having a ballast in a boat. Without enough ballast weight, the boat will capsize. It is not the intention that we capsize. Interesting.
Oh, that's deep.
All right. Oh, you want more 3 than 6. Okay. Thank you for sure. Fantastic. Well,
Well,
DQ,
Ingrid, I appreciate you inviting me on here to hang out with you. It was fun.
and what amazing that I could tap on to you and be like, yo, come on here. I love doing this podcast, but one thing I don't love is doing it by myself. I love having people up here. You guys should be taking advantage of the stream link that's shared and come up here, get to know me, get to know DQ. But so DQ, if people want to come and send you deals or work with you to learn more about sales, where should they go?
Hit me up, Daniel.theq, slide in the DMs, include feed pics. No, just don't do that last part. Yeah, happy to help wherever. And would love to come up with a thing to send anybody deals. If I can have anybody in the community, or if you guys need help with anything, happy to help with any way I can.
Yeah. Well, with that, thank you guys so much. This has been the Explain It podcast with Caroline Kane and Ingryd Hernandez. Please slide into our Instagram DMs as well if you have any deals out here in Arizona, in Vegas, or in Houston. We would love it. Thank you so much, DQ, for being my pop-in guest, whether you wanted to or not. And I always love to hear your perspective on things. This was great. I really appreciate all your hot potato quotes, all this fire that you've dropped. So thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful Wednesday.